your host, Mimosa,
and co-host Kareem.
Welcome to Sometimes We're Bougie and Sometimes We Hood, to healing, navigating grief. It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance.
What is that in my ear?
Hey, welcome in. What's good, cousin Kareem?
Hey, how you doing today?
All is well. All is well. All right, welcome in. Welcome to Sometimes We Bougie.
Hey, sometimes we hood.
I'm Auntie Mimosa.
Hey, it's his cousin Kareem.
So you know what, cousin Kareem? I just realized.
What's that?
This March makes our 1 year that we have been doing the podcast.
Wow.
Yeah. So
wow. Congratulations.
1 year to us, right? Congratulations. 1 year. 1 year to Auntie Mimosa and cousin Kareem. Sometimes we bougie, sometimes we hood. And I just want to take a moment to reflect on that, because we started out with a conversation about it, and we decided to just do it, right?
Yeah.
So we had some hiccups in the beginning with platforms and how to get things set up, but here we are 1 year later.
Yeah, here we go.
Rolling along. So congratulations to us. We're going to celebrate, as they say, celebrate the small wins. So yes, congratulations to us. And we're on several platforms. So I'm broadcasting right now on TikTok. Thank you all, TikTok fam, for following us over the past year. Sometimes we bougie, sometimes we hood. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We are on, and there's so many other platforms that we'll be working toward over this year, over year two, and going forward. So, cousin Kareem, like I said, congratulations to you. Yay. We did it 1 year, and the only thing happens is we just get better. And the only thing I tell anybody is just do it. Figure it out as you go. Nobody has everything in order when we're following their dreams or putting the idea to just move, and then it'll all work. Nobody has all their ducks in a row. Like even a mother duck, all her ducks are not in a row. She got to chase these little critters around to get to get them together and get them, and then finally they get it together. But
congratulations to you too.
Congratulations
to you. If that's not obvious,
we got to pat ourselves on the back for that, because we did it 1 year, right? Exactly. 1 year of talking about grief, 1 year of talking about, and not just grief from the loss of a loved one, but grief in every aspect. And as we say this all the time, this is our intro, right? Our intro is welcome to Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood. This is a podcast where we talk about grief in real life, not just what it looks like in books or therapy. We talk about it in every aspect of life: financial grief, mental grief, emotional grief. We talk about it, relationships, losing job, when you transition from one job to the other, grieving as a caregiver, grieving as grieving yourself from injuries, grieving yourself as you continue to age and move forward. We talk about it all. So today we're talking about, again, kind of like, because we started a year ago and taking it back to day one when we were on. We're going to talk about what grief really is beyond loss, right? That's what we're taking it back to. So, because, some people, yeah, they can go back and listen to the shows, but, every time we revisit a topic, something new may come out of this, right?
Exactly.
So, today, of course, as you say, like, I want to start by saying that when you hear the word grief, right, the mind automatically goes to loss of a loved one, right? And you're not wrong. By no means, you're not wrong, because that's what we always associate it with. However, as I say, you're not getting the big picture. You're not seeing the full concept of grief, because it is much bigger. Is much bigger than loss and memorials, and it's much bigger than that. So, and that's what we're going to talk about today, like what grief really is. So, wherever you're listening from, in the car, at work, cleaning up, laying down, whatever you do. And if you listen to the podcast, number one, thank you for your support. And two, just take a breath with me. We're gonna move through this with Cousin Kareem easy, right? And you don't have to be anything here on this platform. You don't have to pretend to be somebody. You don't have to, act as a therapist or whatever your profession is. You don't have to do that here. You can just listen, right? So, after this past year of doing this podcast, Cousin Kareem, what have you come to understand what grief really is?
It's that part of the mind that you don't want to think about. It's that part of life that you really have to force yourself to come into some kind of this relativeness with, because majority of the time you just don't want to talk about it because it's too deep to actually want to talk about.
Right.
And it's a hard subject to really talk yourself through it and then to find the ending of it, because and a lot of times you can talk yourself into the grief, but then some people get lost in it. They don't know how to find the exit.
Right.
And so I believe that's one of the things that we strive to try to help people through, is knowing that there's an end. If you go into something, you got to know you're going through it. You're not just going into it. You're going to go through it.
Right.
And once you understand that aspect of it, then you should be able to understand that there's an end to the grief. It's just not going to be immediate.
Right. Exactly.
I think a lot of people confuse that part. They think, oh, it's just, somebody dies or somebody passes away and then that's it. It's just like, no, there's a lot more to it. How close were you to them? How close were they to you? What did it mean? Like, what did you guys accomplish in your life together?
Right. Exactly. Right. So most of us were taught that, grief shows up when, like you said, somebody transitions, when you cry, when you go to a memorial service, you take some time, then eventually it's like you're okay, right? But that's the version of grief that most people recognize. That's what they're most familiar with, right? But what happens when you're hurting and there was no loss, no life loss, right? That's the question. Like, what happens when you're hurting and nobody transitioned? There was no life loss. Nobody brings the casseroles, or or nobody sends a sympathy card. Nobody asked the question, like, how are you really doing? Like, some people check in, but it's not, I want to say some people, I think, no, not even some people, because I do it myself, right? You get in the habit of, hey, how are you? How have you been?
Conversational pieces.
That conversate, right? It's just it's empty. It's an empty question that you weren't looking for them to answer, really, So, and it's funny because sometimes I'll respond to somebody, do you want me to lie or do you want the truth?
The truth is always better.
But do you want to hear the truth? That's it. Do you want to hear it? You know what I'm saying? So I will say, do you want the lie or do you want the truth? If you're asking me how I'm doing, and be honest. So if you want the lie, I'm going to just say I'm fine, I'm good. I hope you're good too, and keep it moving. If you want the truth, I'll tell you how I really, really feel at that time. Or maybe not. Depends on what's going on. And yet, we feel that same heaviness, right? The same confusion, the same loss. And that's when people start thinking like something is wrong with them, or they're in depression or anxiety, or they're feeling sad, right? So let's be like really, really clear on this. Like, grief is not just about the physical loss. It's about loss in general. Not, you know what I'm saying? Grief is not just about life loss. It is about loss in general. And that loss comes in many forms. It comes in many forms, right?
Yeah.
It looks very different. I mean, and it can look different, but we have to know what it is. And that's one of the things, like in doing this podcast over the last year, the things that I've learned in my research is that you have to name your feelings. Like, you have to name what you're feeling, right? You have to name it. You have to name what that grief is looking like to you. Most people just say, oh, I'm sad. I'm feeling melancholy. I'm feeling blah. I don't know what it is. But of course, that comes with emotional growth, right? It comes with mental growth, that you're able to recognize your feelings and put a name on it, right? And over the past year, you've heard me say several things. Grief is love with nowhere to go. That's number one. Grief is love with nowhere to go. And just because grief is with you, or what was the other one I said, Kareem, about, just because you grieve, it doesn't change the environment, right? Yeah. Grief does not change the environment. And here's another one. Grief is an emotion, mental, physical, and sometimes spiritual response to a change you did not ask for. It's right. Now that's powerful. Think about that. Grief is an emotional, mental, and physical, and sometimes spiritual response to change you didn't ask for, right? No one asks for, at least I would hope nobody asks for somebody to transition. You know what I'm saying?
This podcast,
right? Okay, right. I would hope nobody asks for nobody to transition, but we sometimes say stuff in the heat of anger, boy, especially when you're a kid, right? You get mad at your parents. I wish you would, but no. But yeah, I have to laugh about that. I would hope nobody would ask for that, but it's what happens when life looks different than you expected, right? No one asks to get fired from a job. No one asked to do that, right? You don't ask, you don't go, oh, you're going to fire me today. I want you to fire me today. You know what I'm saying? You might get, no one asked for a sudden loss of a relative or a child or a parent. Nobody asked that. Nobody says, hey, or praise to the universe, or whatever God you serve, whatever you call them. Nobody says, hey, I want you to give my parent cancer, or I want you to, have them transition in an accident, or I want you, nobody asks for that. No one asks or prays for that, right? You know what I'm saying? They don't wish that on their worst enemy, whatever they're going through. So nobody asks for that. So imagine, that's the life we navigate through, right? So no one asks for financial difficulty. No one asks for age. We don't ask to age. We don't ask for a request to injury. These things just happen in life, right? And that's what we have to navigate our grief through. So, and what happens when life looks different than we expect, grief is what shows up, right? It shows up when something ends. It shows up when something shifts. It shows up when something is taken, and it shows up when something never happens. Right?
And what's that something that never happened?
So think about relationships. I mean, that's in key to relationships, right? Or even with employment, when something never happens, especially those two aspects, right? You're in a relationship, the person talks promises to you. They talk about what it is that they're going to do for you, how they're going to do for you, and it never happens. And now you're grieving the relationship because false promises and false things were talked about that person wasn't consistent about and did not do. And then over time, you're looking back like you're looking at the relationship, or there's a breakup, right? You have the breakup, and then you start thinking back over how the relationship took course over the past, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many years. And it's like you never grew in the relationship. Neither person grew in the relationship. The relationship didn't grow. It just stayed the same. That's something that never happens, right? Or you have dreams and goals that you want to achieve, and before you know it, time has passed, and you look up and you've never done it. You grieve your past, right? When something is taken, thievery, right? People break into your home, they break into your car. Something is taken from you, something valuable, something precious, right? When something shifts, and that's the big one, is like when something shifts, because that's about your life shifting. Something in your life is shifting. Whether you're a caregiver grieving someone who is alive, that elderly person, that aunt, that uncle, grandparent, your mom, your siblings, right? Your life shifts. You become the caregiver. You can't do the things you used to do because now you're responsible for caring for somebody else. Or even if that's your job, as a caregiver, and that individual that you're caring for takes a turn for the worse, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And then, like we said, I said something ends, and I was thinking that's something I looked at over the weekend. There is a saying about chaos, and I read this on a card some years back, and it was like, chaos is when something ends and a new thing begins. That's chaos, right? So you can add grieving to that, like in that chaos of life. When something ends, something begins, right? And you have to be able to navigate through that. And like nobody prepares us for that kind of grief, right? Nobody
Yeah.
prepares, nobody talks about this stuff. Like if in there, I'm sure there's other podcasts and other people that talk about grief, or you may have counselors that talk about it, therapists, psychiatrists, so forth. But are they really talking about like the depths of what we're talking about? Are they in it? Are they really, really in it? Right. And we understand that grief can show up as sadness, it can show up as anger, numbness, anxiety, exhaustion, irritation, brain fog, and withdrawal. That's how it shows up. Sometimes, grief doesn't look like crying, it looks like being tired all the time and not knowing why. So, Cousin Kareem, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what do you remember expressing, or how did grief show up for you in different times that you did not like realize what it is after we've been in this for a year, like after we've been in this broadcast for a year, this podcast for a year, do you now, like, if you had to reflect back on some things that you were going through and say, oh, I was grieving, I didn't realize that's what it was, what would you say? How would you recognize it? Or the question would be, now that we've done this, we've been a year into this podcast and we've covered so many topics, going forward, how would you say you recognize grieving in your life?
Grieving will come in a point of like disassociating, just stepping back from everything. Mm-hmm. And then if you tried to get me to be included, it would be met with anger. And I realized that I wasn't ready to talk. I wasn't ready to converse about anything. Like talking is different than conversing, in the sense that you're just talking. That's what talking is. Somebody's talking to you and there's no exchange of conversation. Right. That's what conversion is. And it's just like, I realized that either I would talk or I wouldn't talk, and I would just listen. Right. And a lot of times I wouldn't do anything with it. I would just let it go. But as time went on, I had to look into myself and figure out from or what it was that I was trying to heal from.
Okay.
And it wasn't just an avenue for me to kind of escape. It was just, I wanted to know the difference of escaping completely from it, right, or trying to get into it to try to.
Gotcha. Oh, because
doing this podcast, I didn't.
You're glitching.
The right ways to do it or to handle it. Oh.
Uh-oh. You're glitching.
Is that there? Okay. Yeah, I was doing it the right way. But learning different systems of how to deal with it, it helped, because it let me know that I was approaching the situation the right way. Versus just trying to go about it as usual. It's like, oh, let me just get through this because I know I have to.
Right.
But yeah, that's basically where I come into it. Is just, I knew there wasn't the way that I was doing it wasn't right. But I didn't know which other way to do it.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah. So we both learned. Yes, we both learned a lot this year. So again, TikTok fam, Instagram, Facebook fam, YouTube fam, if you all are joining us right now, welcome to Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood with Auntie Mimosa and Cousin Kareem. And we are this is like a 1 year. We've been on doing this for 1 year, and I just realized that Cousin Kareem and I, and Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood, is now 1 year old. So,
Okay.
and we're, reflecting back on the year and, topics like this topic here, like what is grief really? Taking it back to the beginning to talk about, what we've learned over this past year, what grief really is, beyond the loss of a loved one. And I want to, like, at this moment, take some time to, like, acknowledge grief that doesn't get acknowledged, and, like, talk about the types of grief that we don't talk about, which we did. We had topics over this on this we've had topics about this over the past year, being we talked about grief from a divorce or relationship or breakup in relationships, right? A job you lose or a career that did not work out for you, a move and relocation. Like, we covered that in like a 2-part series about moving, how grief really affects like the elderly when they relocate, or people when they relocate. We talked about, I don't think we got into estrangement from family too deep, but we did cover that, people not family members, and we touched on it here and there. And maybe we need to do like a 2-part series on that, estrangement from family and grieving, like what they call fatherless daughters and motherless sons, or fatherless sons. You know what I'm saying? When parents are absent from the home with kids, from their children growing up, and what that actually does to a person as they navigate life. So we're gonna touch on that. That might be a 2 to 3-part series. Infertility or loss of a child. We touched on that. We talked about injuries, a diagnosis, or change in health. We talked about that. We talked about aging, how grieving ourselves as we age. And like I said, moving forward, realizing, like, as we age, his cousin Kareem and I age, like over the weekend, I had a busy, when I tell you, super busy weekend yesterday.
So what were you doing?
Just the full weekend. It wasn't even the full weekend. It was just yesterday.
Okay. So let us know. What was he doing?
Oh my God. So I was supposed to go out of town. I really was supposed to go out of town. But however, I had some difficulties, and I just became highly frustrated, just to forget it. I'm not going. And so I spent the day out in the community, out with a friend. And we went to eat, then picked up their niece, went to the mall, and went to the fair. Okay. You talk about exhausted from that. No, and not only that, just being at the fair. It's not just being at the fair. I rode a ride. What ride did I get on? With her. I rode. What did I ride with her? It was a simple ride with her. Oh, no, the damn carousel. The carousel with the horses. I rode that. Tell me why I got dizzy on the carousel.
Wow.
I was like, I don't get dizzy. This is growing up.
Dehydrated?
I'm the thrill seeker, right? I am the thrill seeker. I am the one who loves adventure, zip lining, the roller coasters, everything. Love it. I rode the stupid little carousel that goes in a circle, right? With the horses that go. And then we weren't even on a horse. She didn't want to get on a horse. So, got the little sleigh that you sit in.
Yeah.
We were sitting in that. And I felt myself getting dizzy. I was just like, where did this come from?
Dehydration.
I was like, where did this come from? Like, why am I getting dizzy on the damn carousel? Like, am I serious? And then we were in line talking to this lady, and I wanted to do there was another ride that I wanted to go on. And it was one of the swinging, like I think it was at the boat that swings this way, but it also turns you at the same time as it's going.
Oh, wow.
I wanted to do that. And I wanted to ride that. And I wanted to ride zero gravity. And I was like, I can't, if I couldn't handle the stupid little carousel, right? What made me think I was going to be able to handle zero gravity ride or that one? And I just said, no, I'm not doing it, because I see there are things that has changed with me and being in my 50s, right? It's a lot of things that have changed, and I just didn't, some stuff I realized and some stuff I did not pay attention to, right? So talking about the aging process and grieving who we used to be. Yes. Because I was just like, it was disappointing that I couldn't even bring myself to get on zero gravity. You know what I'm saying? And then, of course, I do have a knee injury. I have that knee injury. So, my knee started hurting. We have been walking all day. My body was trying to cramp. And yeah, I was more than likely dehydrated, and I had to go get an electrolyte and drink that. So I would be able to sleep. You know what I'm saying? And my body wouldn't act really, really crazy. But I'm like, okay, I need to get in the gym. I need to really start back working out and it's not about taking myself to who I was before, because that's not going to happen. It's about improving the body now, right? Because I can't go backwards. I can't, you don't go backwards. You just improve on where you are now. So when it comes to the aging process and grieving the aging process, I get it. I don't have the same strength I used to have. I don't even have it. There was a point in time I could lift anything, move furniture, move this, move. No, I'm not doing it. No, hey, somebody else gonna do it, because I'm not doing it. I don't have the, I'm not. You know what I'm saying? So I get the aging. And just imagine, like, as we maneuver, as we continue to age, and I think back to like my grandmother and my mother as they aged, and my godfather Joe as he aged, and it got to the point he would say, I can't do the things I used to do. I can't do things that I used to do. He said, I can't do that no more. And I'd be like, what? And in my mind, it would throw me for a loop. I'd be like, what? What do you mean? You are the man. You were the man of the family. You could do anything. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's things that we have to look at, right? So caring for someone, like grieving somebody, caring for someone who's still alive, we talked about that. And we talked about the version of you that existed before experiencing a trauma, grieving that. And that's a big one. We haven't even touched. I don't even think we touched on that topic.
No, we never really. Yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was like, did we even talk about that? No, I don't think we have that.
We haven't even touched that topic, the grieving the version of you that existed before trauma. And I definitely want to touch on that. And that's going to be one of those conversations that's going to be difficult. That's going to be one of those conversations or topics that we talk about that some people probably are not going to like or don't want to hear, because I want to approach that topic from talking about the perspective of people who undergo incarceration for long periods of time and then have to come out and come back into society. And the reason I want to look at that from that perspective is because being incarcerated, that's a whole nother world. I've never been incarcerated. I don't want to be. I don't wish that on anybody, because to my understanding, that is a whole another world. That is a completely different world that is vicious. Like I know what we see on TV. I don't even think they touch. I really don't even think they touch on everything that takes place um, to an individual when they're incarcerated. I don't think so. I really don't. I don't think they. I don't even think they throw or flick a little bit of water at that at that subject or what really happens. I mean, yeah, there's documentaries out there that kind of talk about what people endure on the inside when their freedom is taken away. We've heard some people talk about, some relatives and friends that have experienced incarceration talk about what happens when their freedom is taken away once they get behind those bars and them things locked them. And I honestly think there's a whole lot more that goes on behind those bars than we could even imagine. But I want to talk about that because I'm sure there is some trauma, because there are things on, that happen that we don't even know about. There's assault. We watch on TV and what we heard about assault, the fights and treatment, and that. And there's probably trauma. I'm not even proud to say probably. There is trauma behind it. The trauma, not only that. What about, like, I wish I could find someone to talk about, like, trauma from being in a mental institution. Even though they may, like, at the time when they really, really had them, that's somebody who's slightly capable of, having a conversation about that, because that's trauma. Because when we think about it, when you think about these institutions, when a person is locked and their freedom is locked up or locked away and their freedom is taken away from them, there's some things that happen that's not supposed to happen. There's some care, not care. There's a neglect of care that takes place that's not supposed to take place, that causes trauma, right? And then you now have to come out of these institutions back into quote unquote normal society, and then expect to function like a normal person, right?
Yeah,
so
it's definitely easy.
No, it's not an easy topic. It is not. It's not an easy topic, and we're there. And and that's I think that's one of the things I live for, and that is talking about the difficult topics, to bring awareness to. Like we said, we talked about individuals who are addicted, and how society feels like when they're lost, or when there's something happens to them, or when they're supposed to grieve, it's like they're not even looked at. So you're supposed to get over it and move on, or it's like you're not even supposed to grieve. Like, that person is not supposed to grieve or have any type of grief or experience anything. Or it's like, oh, woe is you. Okay, get over it. It's not fair to them. And like, this is a no judgment, right? We listen, and what is it, the TikTok thing? We listen and do not judge. Social media, we listen and do not judge. Like, we all have to get to that point and recognize that. And and some of us are grieving, so who we used to be, right? You used to be that B-boy, B-girl, whatever. You used to be slim and fine back in the day in high school. You was the high school football star, high school basketball star. You used to be that. You were no longer that. Yeah, some of you are grieving that person. Some of you are grieving. Some of you are grieving, like, if you were, and think about that. Oh my gosh, that's another topic we're gonna talk about. Grief from weight loss or weight gain. That's gonna be
people grieving from that.
So we're gonna talk about that, because if you were heavy set, and I know I experienced this, because at one point Auntie Mimosa was 400 pounds. She was 400 pounds and dropped a considerable amount of weight. And At times I would look in the mirror and I would still see that 400-pound person. I would still see that person. I didn't see the slimmer version of myself. I still saw the heavy person. And to this day, it's the same way for me. It is still the same way. Even though I have increased in size a little. So, but even when I look in the mirror, I still don't see the slimmer. I don't see that slim version, that slimmer version person, that slim person. I still see that 400-pound person, regardless of regardless of what anybody says, regardless of the fact that they go, oh my gosh, you've lost so much weight and you look really good. And I don't see that person. I don't. You know? And what about you, cousin Kareem? Think about, like, what part of your younger years or your younger self that when you look at yourself now, you like, oh my goodness, this is really different. I'm really different.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that actually a couple of days ago. Like, I returned. So you went up in weight. I went back down in weight. And it's just like, I lost 30 pounds. And I don't feel like myself to this day. And it's just like, but I was this weight when I was in high school. And now I'm this size again. And it's just like, how is that possible? Like, I gained all that weight, but then I lost it all. But when I went to military school, like, I got kicked out of all New York City public schools. And it was for fighting.
Right.
And it was crazy. It's like y'all didn't know about this. I remember I was talking to our cousin Pat. She was like, what? I didn't know that. That's why you left? I was like, yeah, that's why I left. She goes, you was wilding out like that? I was like, yeah, I was wilding out like that. It's like, my mom didn't tell nobody. She was embarrassed. She literally told me. It's like, none of your cousins know you left. That's because I asked her about it after I had a conversation. I said, you didn't tell nobody that I left? She goes, no. Why would I tell people? Like, it's not no big deal. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, it's a downer. I was like, and I'm like, I'm sitting back there thinking about, like, why didn't she tell anybody I went to military school after people who served in the military that we had in our family? And I'm thinking, like, this is like on the same level. I'm thinking, she's like, no, it's not on the same level. You got kicked out of all New York City public schools for fighting, for throwing somebody down the staircase. And I'm like, how did this happen? When did this happen? I'm like, it's funny too, because I didn't remember what I did for like 6 months. And then one day it just hit me. One day it just hit me what I did. I was like, oh crap. Like, I didn't remember doing that, but it was a little bit nerve-wracking, and not nerve-wracking, it was just intense, just the thought about it.
Right.
But it was just weird. But now I'm looking at life like after that, and it's different. Everything is different. Everything is not the same. It's just but you know, talking about it with people, it was crazy because some people understood what I was going through, and then some people were just like, well, why did you? I'm like, first of all, you were talking to a teenager. You know, it's not like you're talking to an adult. Like, nowadays, it's a whole bunch of different. It's a whole difference,
right?
And you know, and it's the context of everything changes as you get older. You know, and you don't realize your thought process when you were doing it. You know, I don't know if it's a youth thing or if it's just like an elder thing or getting into that elder age. But it's like you go through life when you're younger. And for me, whatever happened. And then as I got older, I started thinking about what it is that I was doing. You know, like when I would get into fights, it was just like, sometimes I'd be in a good mood. I'd be like, all right, chill.
Right.
But then if I was in a medium mood, I would just snap. And then it would be like trying to remember what I did, because I'd be going home. And my ex-girlfriend would be like, why you got blood on your shirt? Why you got blood on your arms? And I'd be like, I really don't know. And it was just the toxic thought patterns that I had back then. You know, even through my 20s was different than how I think now.
Right.
You know, it's just something that it's just a way you process stuff. As you go through life, you grow and you go around and you realize that this is not the way you're supposed to think about things. And it's just different. But I always had that dual face of, hey, I'm smiling, but you never know what's in the back of my mind going on.
Beware, right?
It was different. It was different. I guess just going through life. And I met this one guy, and it was just funny because he was telling me, he was like, what is going on in your mind right now? So I told him, he was like, why are you letting that happen to yourself? Why are you thinking like that? And I'm like, which way am I supposed to think? And then he walked me through what I should be thinking about in a situation. Because we were at a game, a baseball game, and I had just went into like a fight or flight type situation mode. Like somebody bumps me, I'm knocking them out. You know, it was like one of those kind of stupid situations.
Right.
And I was in college and I was thinking about it and I didn't understand, but this older head, he looked at me and took me to the side and said, I understand where you're coming from. I used to be the same way. But I want you to think about what you could be putting yourself into if you continue down that road. And he gave me this book. It was a real skinny book. And I'm trying to remember the name of it right now, but it literally took me, it was probably like 189 pages. And I'm a good reader. I'm a speed reader.
Okay.
It took me 3.5 weeks to read that book because there were so many points in the book that you had to sit back and think about what was just said. And that threw me off because I had read so many books. I mean, novels, 1,000 pages and all this kind of stuff. And this book had 185. And I'm like, I'll read that in like a couple of days. It took me 3.5 weeks to read that entire book.
Wow.
And it changed me because it made me think on myself and how I was relating to other people and how people were looking at me at the same time, relating to them or other people.
Right.
And I had to take a step back and realize that it's not about only me. It's about other people.
Right.
And I started taking that into conscious effort, making a conscious effort to take that into consideration. Because I was just doing stuff that wasn't right. And then I seen the dude, like I used to see the dude like every other year I would see the guy. And it was crazy because we would talk for a little bit and then, I don't know what happened to him. His restaurant closed down and I hope he's living a better life, but.
Right. So let me ask you this question, Ruth. So let me ask you this question. Like, when you think about that phrase, who you used to be, what version of yourself immediately comes to mind?
Yep. What about it? Oh, who I used to be?
Yeah, when you think about the phrase, who you used to be, what version of yourself immediately comes to mind?
The angry.
The angry. Oh, okay. So
I didn't see myself. I didn't see myself as I was. I literally, about like 4 years ago, I took a picture at church when I was going to church, and I never realized how short I was. I always thought I was taller, but I would approach situations like as if I was taller. You know, I used to go to school with this guy named Everlast, and he was just as tall as I was. And I don't know if it was because of him, but I blame it on him. But
you blame it?
I blame it on him because I don't think he realized how short he was. Because he used to go through life, and I seen him when he was walking to school, and he was talking to a guy named Ricky.
Right.
And he grabbed it. They were face to face, and Ricky was taller than him. Obviously, he was like 6 feet tall. He grabbed him out of shirt collar and pulled him up and pulled him down into his punch while he was punching up and knocked him out. And so I'm like, yo, that's, I didn't look at it like, oh, damn, he just knocked him out. I was like, oh, wow, that's a good technique. Let me try that. So I just go around and do stupid situations. And
so there was an angry, right? There's an angry Kareem.
Yeah, there was that because I'm smiling now. You know what I mean? Look all nice.
There's an angry cousin Kareem.
It was just like,
oh my goodness!
That's how I acted.
Right.
That.
Oh, that would do. Yeah, that's funny. Right.
It was just crazy because I would emulate some of the things that I've seen to see if it worked, if it was real. And I don't know. I would just do stuff that just to try it out. And then I did it. Then here I am years later. I probably was in like mid-40s. And I'm realizing I hadn't been in a fight in like 6-7 years. And it's crazy because I didn't realize how short I was.
So with that thought, like, did you miss the version of yourself that was angry and always fought? Or are you
of myself?
Yeah, that was a version of yourself that was angry and always fought. Like, do you miss that version of yourself? Do you grieve that? Or are you like, I'm glad that person is not here anymore? Where you at, Cousin Kareem?
As soon as you gotta say that again because it broke up.
Oh. I said, do you miss that version of yourself?
Say it again. So did I miss the version of myself, or
do you miss that version of yourself, the version of yourself that was always ready to fight? Do you miss that version?
Sometimes,
that person that was angry?
Sometimes I think I do, but it was a moment of time when I approached the situation where there was a guy when I was in my college years where I beat him up and he didn't fight back. And it made me mad. But then it made me mad at myself for beating him up because he didn't fight back. And then I got to a situation of realizing that most people don't want to fight. They just put up the front like they want to fight.
Okay.
And that's when it hit me. I was in my 30s when I had an opportunity to fight 2 guys. And I walked up to one of the guys. And I walked up to him. But in my mind, I'm thinking I'm face to face. But I was shorter than him. And I got all the way up in his face, which is the worst place that you can be at in a fight. People know how to fight. They know what I'm talking about. You don't want to be that close to anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Distance.
Yeah.
Distance between you and another person.
Exactly. Distance is your opponent, is your friend. And I walked up on this guy and I told him, I was like, if you really wanted to do something, you would never let me get this close to you. Because I can just simply rip your throat out. And I grabbed him by his throat and he dropped to his knees. And left all 5 of my fingertips in his throat. Like the pressure I had on his throat was left on his neck. And then his friend was standing there saying, your friend wouldn't just be standing there while I have your throat in my hand. But if he knows if he hits me, I can just rip your throat out. And it was a moment. And the guy just stood there, looked at his friend. His friend looked at him. He's gasping, like, and I'm just like, I just pushed him. I just let him go. I was like, so that's what you should realize in this instant is who you're dealing with. And it was just,
I've been flagged for violent behaviors and crime activities. Oh my goodness.
Sorry. Okay. Well, we'll leave that subject where it is then. But it was it was a moment of clarity for me, just to understand just the notions that I didn't need to go through anymore at that age. You know, it was just like I wasn't missing it. It was just a moment. Right. It was just a moment. It was interesting. But then now I look at it from the other side. It's just like if I had to go back into that, would I be fast enough? Would I be, I don't know. But I try not to think about it. But then I do sometimes. Like what happens if somebody crosses that lane where I just try to talk myself out of it, talk myself out of the situation, talk them out of the situation. Mm-hmm. It's a thought process that when you get older, you realize that you can't do the same thing.
Right. So with that in mind, as we get ready to close, I tell you, this is the fastest hour ever. Oh my gosh. So with that, as we prepare to close out today's podcast on Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood, there are instances in our lives where we grieve specific periods of time, and we don't always get an opportunity to talk about that. But wherever you are today, whatever you're carrying today, grief, love, questions, or exhaustion, it all belongs here. Like, this is a safe space, you don't have to rush your healing. You don't have to explain your pain, and you don't have to walk this journey alone. There are people, we're here. You have therapists, counselors, friends, family that you can always talk to. If today's episode spoke to you, we truly love to hear from you. Like, share your story, leave a comment, or pass this conversation video along to someone who might need it. Sometimes healing starts with, I thought of you when I heard this. And you can connect with us on Instagram, Queen of Life Empowerment, or SBSH Grief Podcast. On Facebook, Sometimes We're Bougie, Sometimes We're Hood. On TikTok, Sometimes Bougie, Sometimes Hood. Make sure you like, follow, comment, share, tell other people about us. You can email us, and on YouTube at Sometimes We're Bougie, Sometimes We're Hood as well. Like, share, follow, subscribe. And you can always email Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood at gmail.com if you wish to be a guest on the show. Leave a comment, have anything to say. I read everything. And, as we get prepared for the beginning of year 2, be kind to yourself, hold space for your emotions, and remember, you are never alone in this journey. And this is why we have this platform, because so many people are grieving and they have no idea that they're grieving. They don't know what it looks like. They don't know how to recognize it. They don't know what to call it. And that's why we're here. We're here to have the challenging and difficult conversations, to point this stuff out, to point these things out, to help other people heal in their journey. And remember, you are carrying the most beautiful love there is. The companion, we're going to come up with some companion worksheets to the podcast, and coming up in the future, I have some workshops, grief workshops, coming this year for year 2. So just remember, this is a gentle place to reflect on your love. Remember, your light still matters. Your heart still matters. And this has been Sometimes We Bougie,
Sometimes We're Hood.
But we're always, always human. And remember, we're here every Sunday, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, you all have a great day.
Enjoy. Peace.
It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance.